Yeah, welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. The regional track and field fraternity has been in a frenzy since Tuesday's edition of the Zone, where we aired a one-on-one interview with veteran coach Stephen Francis. The world-renowned track and field coach did not mince his words in blaming the J3As for the failure to so far qualify a men's 4x400-meter relay team to the Paris Olympic Games. Francis singled out David Riley, who is Deputy Chairman of the J3A's Competitions Commission, and Keith Wellington, a member of the selection committee, who he feels are not well equipped to manage roles at the senior athletics level. David Riley provided a riveting response to Francis' claims on Wednesday's show. Let's get you caught up with what has transpired.
Mr. Gale is a trying man, but he consistently gets let down by the appointments he makes. Jamaica historically has treated senior athletics as an adjunct to junior athletics. The same people are there, school principals, whatever, and their technical committees, making these decisions on issues they know absolutely nothing about. They know nothing about senior athletics. They might have some kind of resume in juniors, being a principal at high school or being coach at high school and so on. And as a result of these problems, these personnel, they keep making stupid decisions when it comes to seniors. For example, they're deciding that they are using current year times to select world year teams. That is rubbish, unheard of. And only people who know nothing about senior athletics would ever even suggest that.
Well, I choose to coach at this level for a particular reason. I am a level 5 certified coach in sprints and hurdles. I have an academy certification from World Athletics, and I got a distinction in that class. Stephen Francis can't school me about training theory. I also finished at the top of the class with the level 2 World Athletics course for jumps. And I was also the first local coach to have developed a long jumper locally and have him qualified for the World Championships long before JAAA. His name is Ramon Bailey. That was done locally. So
that's at the senior level.
And that's at the senior level. He went to the World Championships 2017. Yeah. I choose to coach at this level.
All right, David Riley, and before him, Stephen Francis. Joining us now via Zoom to give us his rebuttal to Francis is Keith Wellington, President of the Intersecondary School Sports Association, ISA, and more importantly for this discussion, a member of the J3A's selection committee, which, by the way, I found out 2 days ago. Keith Wellington, welcome to the SportsMax Zone. How are you doing?
I'm great, Ricardo. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Lance. Good afternoon, viewers.
Well, like I did with Mr. Riley yesterday, I'm not sure if I should, but I'm gonna do it nonetheless. I'm gonna give you the floor to respond to the accusations made by Mr. Stephen Francis.
Well, first of all, let me say that I have watched the interview or the excerpts that you have published or aired. Both for David and Mr. Francis. And I think David did a really good job in terms of rebuttal. I am not sure that I want to put myself in a position where I'm going toe-to-toe with Stephen. But I think that I must thank him for, in his customary style, bringing some highlight to some issues that he has. Well, they say that a clock is right at least 2 times per year. And 2 times per day, rather. And we know that every year, Stephen brings up a very topical issue that captures the airwaves and, forces people to think and have discussion. I want to use this latest edition of his rumblings to probably try and help all of us to understand how the J3A works. And maybe by so doing, we can leave everyone to make their own judgment as to whether myself, David, or anyone else has the necessary competence to assist the J3As in making correct decisions and if we are to be blamed, as Stephen is suggesting, David would have outlined, some of how it works in terms of the selection process and the J3s. So let me just go back to that and try and focus a little bit on that. So first of all, I'm an executive member of the J3s elected by the membership. The J3 has an executive body that I don't think many persons realize have quite a few outstanding past athletes and coaches. I hear part of the sentiments being expressed very frequently nowadays is that we need to get persons who have been involved at the highest level involved in the J3s. But that is already so. If we start with the president himself, who has been an administrator for well over 3 decades, right up to almost the highest level in NACAC World Athletics. And then you think about the fact that as a part of the executive, we have Sharon Simpson, you have Michael Frater, you have Frederick Dakers, Wilma Charlton, T.C. Campbell. These are persons who have run the entire gamut of athletics successfully in Jamaica, right? The selection committee, to which obviously Mr. Francis is referring to my incompetence to serve, is a committee, like David pointed out, that has persons of various ilk that I don't think that, as good as I am, I don't think that I can necessarily unduly influence the decision that these persons want to make. And so to suggest that I would be the problem, or David and I would be the major problem, is really unheard of. Stephen Wood, I think, is right in terms of the fact that the president, he's somebody who listens a lot, and he tries to surround himself with a variety of persons who are able to give him advice. And therefore, I think that whether or not those persons that he have selected or have been elected to support him are doing a good job, I would say yes, they have. And for the most part, we have to be mindful that persons will come into these discussions and serve in different ways, have different opinions, but it comes together well when persons have different opinions, and you're not always going to have things your own way. I know persons refer to Stephen as being brilliant, as being a genius, but there are some who also say that he's a flawed genius. And sometimes because of your brilliance, you believe that you're always right, and you do not value the opinions of others, and that sometimes get persons in trouble. So I don't think that I need to respond directly to Steve as to whether or not I'm competent. I'm there to serve a purpose at the behest of the membership and the president. I think that I have made valuable contribution. As David said, the selection committee is not there just for senior team selection. This committee is one committee that is charged with the responsibility of selecting teams for various competitions where the national team, whether junior or senior, is expected to participate. And for each member of that committee, they serve a different purpose. So we have persons who come in just to provide the committee with the data in terms of persons' performance, whether or not they have met the required standards, how many persons should be selected for a particular. So to say that I play no role and it should all be persons who have coached at the senior level or managed or be agents at the senior level, I think that is really unfortunate.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Keith, and I think we all appreciate that very much. Here's my follow-up question, though. So specifically, Stephen Francis spoke to that rule or selection criteria relating to athletes must compete in the year of competition to be eligible to be selected for the World Relays. And if we listen to what he had to say, then clearly you can see that that is where his main issue is. Could it be that he feels that given that Keith Wellington and David Riley might be somewhat closer to the president, may give more advice to the president, and if the president is listening to Keith Wellington and David Riley, and this is a recommendation coming specifically from those two individuals, then because he has such a major problem with that specific part of the rule, that he puts that down to Steve, to Keith Wellington and David Riley?
All right, so first of all, two things. One, it was not a rule, right? It was not a rule that was, and I think David explained it. It was a guide that was provided to the selection committee that would have come through, I think, the technical committee, well, certainly through the president and the executive. It was presented to us, say, use this as a guideline. But I can also say to you that Stephen would know for a fact that particular, it was not shared with the athletes. So no athlete or coach or manager could have not allowed your athlete to make themselves available because of that rule. It was not shared with the rule. It was an internal document that says when they are selecting the team, look at the persons who have already run this season.
Mr. Wellington,
let me just finish my point.
Yeah.
Let me just finish the point. 1 second, less than a minute. So that rule was a guide. But within the selection committee, there was a senior athlete who is from Stephen's camp, who was selected, who had not yet opened their season up to that point.
Who was that athlete?
I would rather not say. The person later, although we were told that the person was available and fit and ready to participate, the person later withdrew.
So we're talking about Sharika Jackson.
Either the person withdrew or was withdrawn.
Was a reason given for the withdrawal, though?
No, not available.
Not available. Okay, fine. Here is the deal, though. And I think, why is it that the selection committee is using guidelines, and I know that you say it was not a rule, but these are guidelines. And the fact is, as part of the selection committee, there are members, coaches, in some instances, who would be seeing these guidelines and maybe thinking to themselves, okay, why do these guidelines even exist?
All right, so Ricardo, we turn up at the for this particular event, right? Because remember, we're talking about World Relays, where there was no trials held to determine who would be selected. So I would think that the technical committee provided this guideline to ensure that when decisions were to be made, there was a clear guideline that was provided that would ensure that there is equity and there was no bias in terms of determining whether it's athlete A or athlete B should be selected. As I said before, we had at least one instance where a senior athlete, one of our most prominent athletes, had not opened the season yet, right? And their coach was a part of the selection committee, and they indicated that this person is fit, ready, and available, right? And the committee decided, okay, if so-and-so is willing to participate and is ready, we know that person's history, then we will select that person. And we selected the person, named the person, entered the person, and within a few hours, we were told that the person is no longer available.
All right, Keith, here's where I'm going with this. And I brought it up with David Riley yesterday because I think all would concede that it is unhealthy, the kind of relationship that the J3A has with a Stephen Francis. And you said there are people that label him a flawed genius as much as he's highly respected and so on. Yes. But is there anything that the J3As can do from your standpoint to improve the relationship with such a key stakeholder in Jamaica's track and field? Because if you look at the responses to the segment we had yesterday, people are divided on this issue. And I don't think this is a healthy environment for Jamaica's track and field, given the status that it holds in global athletics.
All right, so, Lance and Ricardo, I don't think that the relationship between Stephen and the J3 is acrimonious enough. To be honest, I think that we all understand that this is Stephen Francis. This is how he is. He's forthright, he's frank. He will speak his mind at all times. I don't think that he holds a grudge against the J3A, and I don't think that the J3A holds a grudge against him.
Yeah, but can I stop you quickly, Keith? I hear the point you're making, but there were points in which David Riley spoke about Stephen in derogatory terms yesterday. And you earlier spoke about things that Stephen has said in the past, and you labeled them rumblings. And these are not complimentary terms. So even in the posture that the J3As has projected on the show today and yesterday, it is reasonable.
Remember, this is Keith Wellington. This is not the J3As. And I assure you
but
that
you're representing the J3As. You're representing.
No. I was asked to respond to being singled out.
Yes.
But I am putting my position as Keith Wellington on the table.
Yes.
And as I said before, I know for a fact that Stephen, I don't have an acrimonious relationship with Stephen. As a matter of fact, I don't have any type of relationship with Stephen. But I respect him for what he does. I respect him for the success that he has. I don't think he has anything personal against me, because we have had no sort of interactions where we can say that, boy, we don't see eye to eye or anything like that. And I think similarly, even the public itself, I think if you do a poll with the public, they will tell you that this is how he is. We understand him. We don't agree with him some of the time, but we understand that this is the way it is. And when I said earlier that he's often referred to as a flawed genius, the fact is that nobody is perfect. All of us have our flaws, right? And so the complementary part would be the fact that he is a genius. He's brilliant, but like every other human, he's not perfect. So to label him as a flawed genius is not to belittle him or to say anything derogatory about him. It is just to establish the fact that, first of all, he's human. Well, first of all, he's brilliant, he's a genius. But second of all, he's still human.
Well, I just want to remind you, Keith, that you said a few minutes ago on the show that a clock that doesn't work is right at least twice per day.
Yeah,
and you referenced that in the context of your assessment of Stephen Francis and his pronouncements in the past, which isn't a glowing report, is it?
No, right. And I went on to say I would prefer to focus on the fact that he could be right? And he could be right because even a clock is right twice per day. So I said to you that I think David did a very good job of showing his disagreement, and for both of us, I think, right? But I wanted to use this opportunity to more focus on the fact that, one, there is a particular process that is involved, and based on the process and the personnel that are involved, I don't think that the public could readily accept that David and I could be so influential as to be the persons who are causing the problems, if there is a problem, or if there are problems.
Keith Wellington, thanks very much. I appreciate you joining us and putting some clarity to this situation, and I'm sure we'll chat again.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Lance, there are some issues here for me.
Yes.
And I thought about this long and hard yesterday after the interview with David Riley. Because I think, and a lot of individuals will take different things from the interviews that we have done over the last 3 days. But I think there is one major issue at the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association that has to be fixed. And I think if that is fixed, we will not have a lot of what we have seen over the last 3 days. The word, Lance, is transparency. The J3As has a massive issue with transparency. And I'm going to bring up a few things here. One, we've dealt with quite a few of these issues on this show over the last year. Athlete welfare, athletes' assistance, yeah? The J3As consistently says that they assist athletes, but nobody knows how many athletes are assisted. Nobody knows how much the J3A spends yearly assisting athletes specifically. We don't know who are the specific athletes who are assisted. We don't know the criteria for assistance for any athlete. That's a massive issue of transparency right there. Selection. There are transparency issues around selection. It showed yesterday when we had the conversation with David Riley, who didn't feel comfortable telling us who the members of the selection committee are. Now that, for me, Lance, tells you everything you need to know. Why would the members of the selection committee for a national sporting association be a secret, be something that you need to contemplate whether the public should know or not? That is a significant problem, and that came out yesterday. And I hear Mr. Wellington today saying that the document that we showed the rule from, well, Mr. Wellington said it's not a rule, it's a guide. But that is problematic because where is the policy? So you're saying the athletes did not see this document, which is fine. So they could not have made a determination from seeing it. But what do the athletes see in trying to make a determination, or the coaches who are not part of the selection committee, or the managers and the agents who are not part of the selection committee? What do they see as to what they need to do to make the team? That's a problem. And I know the J3s will say, well, we reach out to coaches and we ask them if their athletes are available. But what if you miss a coach? What if you miss an agent? What if everybody does not get that reach out? There's a significant issue of transparency there as well. And those issues have to be fixed, Lance. And when you add, for example, this case with Taekwondo Tracy and what is happening there, you realize that there is a lot to be cleaned up at the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association.
Yeah. And to be fair to Keith Wellington, though, Ricardo, and he did say he wasn't representing the J3s today, per se, in his presentation on the show. But he did early in his opening minutes suggest that Stephen Francis's attack on the J3As over time can be viewed as constructive. Yes. He did suggest that there has to be some introspection from the J3A standpoint, and the constant needling from Stephen Francis can be beneficial to the J3As to ensure that it improves its performance, which is, to me, an admission from Keith Wellington that the J3As doesn't always get it right and needs improvement.
Very much the case. I give you a quick one, Lance. West Indies cricket, yes? Whenever a West Indies team is selected, there is usually a press conference. There is usually an opportunity to ask at least the head of selectors, how did you come to the determination to select this athlete?
A selection panel, by the way, that is public, and we all know.
Yes, and a selection panel that is public, and we all know who is on the panel. And we get to ask members of the panel, at least the head of the panel, questions as to how they arrive at certain decisions. Part of what that breeds is a certain level of accountability. So when a selector says this year that I did not select this player for A, B, and C reason, and next year they go and say, I selected this player for A, B, and C reason, then you go, wait, those statements are contradictory, and we can, in our own way, hold them accountable. That doesn't exist at the J3As as it is now. So you have your selection panel that nobody knows who the members are unless you dig, as if you need to be an investigative journalist to get the information. So nobody knows who they are. And then teams are selected and everybody is just left to wonder, why is this person not there? Why are our superstar athletes not there? Is it that they are not available? Is it this? Is it that? Why did you go with this athlete instead of this athlete? Yeah? That issue of accountability is so important, and it starts with transparency. It starts with letting in the stakeholders that are not necessarily part of your selection panel. And I think that is missing right now from the J3s. If we had that information, Lance, if we had that information from May, when all of this happened, if we had the information from May when all of this happened, then when Stephen Francis comes out and says A, B, C, D, E, F, G, we can say to Stephen, but hold on there, Stephen. 4 months ago, the J3A said that this was the case. Are you saying they are lying? Are you saying it is not true? But when Stephen Francis or anybody else comes out and criticizes the J3As, we have nothing to put it against, because the J3As rarely ever tells us anything about their selection process, or whatever it is. There's just a massive issue of transparency that has to be fixed. And if it is not fixed, we will continue to have these situations. And Stephen Francis will do another yearly round in another 12 months. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more on the SportsMax Zone.